In the heart of West Africa, a storm was brewing, not of wind or war, but of truth, a truth buried under dust, deception, and foreign boots. The screen fades from black to satellite imagery, zooming into Burkina Faso. Beneath the earth, glowing veins of gold, lithium, manganese, and uranium pulse under the surface like sleeping giants. Voiceover continues. For decades, Burkina Faso was told it was poor, dependent, helpless without aid, without guidance, without Europe. But on this day, those lies would be crushed under the weight of reality. Cut to a press room in Ouagadougou, the national flag behind a microphone, the buzz of anticipation, reporters sweat in their seats, security lines the walls. Then he enters, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. No teleprompter, no cue cards, just conviction. He speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, in the last 48 hours, without a single foreign consultant, contractor, or overseer, Burkina Faso has launched and completed an experimental mining initiative, entirely pan-African, entirely sovereign. Murmurs break out. Some laugh nervously. Others lean in, sensing something historic. Traoré doesn't flinch. The results will be released today, and when I read them, you will understand why we were colonized, why we were destabilized, and why they fear our awakening. For too long, they told us what we were worth. Now, for the first time in history, we will tell the world what we're truly sitting on. The camera cuts to a digital screen behind him. It flashes one word: Mineral Reveal Initiative, 48 hours of sovereign extraction. Voiceover fades in. The clock had begun, and the world was not ready. The room was now dead silent. Even the international journalists who once dismissed the announcement were leaning forward. Some adjusted their cameras, others nervously glanced at their colleagues. Captain Traoré stepped toward the screen. His fingers hovered for a moment, then tapped. The screen flashed. Phase 1, gold. A satellite image zoomed into a mine in Houndé, western Burkina Faso. Then numbers appeared, real-time metrics, raw data, indisputable. In just 48 hours, Traoré began, our locally trained engineers and military mining units extracted, the screen updated, 3.2 metric tons of pure gold ore. A gasp filled the room. This translates to approximately 185 kilograms of refined gold. In current market value, over $12 million in just 2 days, from one site. The same site, he continued, was previously run by a Canadian company. Over 12 years, they paid Burkina Faso less than 3% in royalties. He paused. Now ask yourself this: who was poor? Them or us? He clicked again. Phase 2, lithium. In the Tambao region, considered undeveloped by Western standards, we deployed a team of 120 Burkina Faso technicians trained with Malian and Guinean support. In 48 hours, 720 metric tons of lithium-rich pegmatite was extracted. The screen calculated in real time. Market value, $2.4 million USD. A French reporter raised her hand, trembling slightly. Captain, are these figures verified? Traoré replied sharply. Yes, not by European institutions, but by African geologists and scientists trained in Bamako, Conakry, and Ouagadougou. He turned back to the crowd. This is not just about minerals. This is about the truth they buried along with our pride. Voiceover rises. In 48 hours, the myth of African dependency had begun to crumble, and the world was finally being forced to listen. The numbers were real, the data verified, the world stunned. But Traoré wasn't finished, not even close. He stepped away from the podium and looked directly into the camera broadcasting across the continent. I want every child in Burkina Faso to hear me. Every mother, every farmer, every soldier, every student. You were never poor. You were never incapable. You were lied to. The screen behind him went black, then lit up with a single word in red: confiscated. He continued. Since independence, over 90% of our mining contracts were designed by foreign experts. 90% of our gold, manganese, zinc, uranium, extracted, refined, and shipped abroad. And we were told to be thankful for crumbs. Photos appeared, European diplomats smiling at signing ceremonies, executives posing at gold sites, children playing beside toxic runoff near abandoned mines. Traoré's voice hardened. And when we asked for more, they called us unstable. When we refused their terms, they called us dictators. When we expelled their troops, they said we would collapse. He walked back to the center of the stage. His voice slowed, sharpened, cut through the silence. But here we are, standing, working, mining, without them. In just 48 hours, we proved that the chains were never on our hands, only on our minds. The crowd didn't cheer. Not yet. It was as if the weight of realization hadn't fully sunk in. The screen updated again. Total sovereign mining revenue, 48 hours, $17.6 million USD. Voiceover. The numbers shocked economists, but what shook the system was the confidence. For the first time, an African leader wasn't asking for loans. He was presenting receipts. Then came a whisper, small but rising from the people outside the press room. Tonga, Tonga, Tonga. Stand up, stand up, stand up. And like a spark on dry ground, it began. Traoré turned back to the screen. The numbers had already caused global analysts to scramble, but now he moved to the heart of the Western Africa dynamic, the hidden fuel of empires. He raised his hand. Let's talk about uranium. The room tensed. In the Sahel, uranium is not a rumor. It is the invisible engine of Europe's nuclear power, of NATO's military technology, of France's light bulbs. A new slide flashed. Experimental extraction site, Arabinda, 48 hours. Uranium ore extracted, 4.8 metric tons. Estimated refined yield, 550 kilograms U308. Yellowcake. Global value, $1.6 million USD. This uranium was not extracted by Areva, not by French engineers, but by Burkina Faso scientists trained with help from Nigerian technicians who once worked under foreign contracts and left them. He looked directly at the press. Ask yourselves, how can France have over 56 nuclear reactors and not one single uranium mine on French soil? The journalists sat frozen. He raised his voice. And yet we, who live above these uranium rivers, study by candlelight. We, whose ground power satellites cannot power a hospital incubator. A journalist from Germany slowly raised her hand. Mr. President, are you declaring uranium nationalized? Traoré didn't blink. No, madam, I am declaring uranium African. Not Burkina Faso, not Nigerian, not Malian, African. And if it is African, it will be used first to light African homes before European streets. Outside the room, the chant grew louder. Tonga, Tonga, Tonga. Traoré nodded softly, then turned to his people through the broadcast. They built weapons from our silence. Now we'll build nations from our truth. Voiceover. The numbers were just the beginning. What followed was an ideological detonation that could not be contained. As the uranium numbers sank in, Traoré walked across the stage and tapped once more on the screen. A new title appeared, Where the Money Really Went. What followed was a timeline, stretching back 20 years, showing international mining corporations, shell companies, and development banks. He didn't name them all, just enough. You know their names, they wear suits, they come with smiles, they called it partnership. But here's what that partnership looked like. A graph appeared. For every $100 million worth of minerals extracted from Burkina Faso soil, 76 million. Exported with zero local processing, $17 million. Operational costs to foreign contractors, $4 million. Banked offshore under technical fees, $3 million. Returned to Burkina Faso, often as development aid. The room exploded with disbelief. Traoré spoke firmly. We were being sold our own blood, gift-wrapped as generosity. Another slide appeared, a breakdown of luxury imports by former mining executives. Villas in Monaco, private jets, leased monthly security contracts signed with former foreign soldiers, advisory payments to anonymous firms in Dubai. While our children die in clinics without gloves, Traoré growled, someone was sipping champagne in Paris, profiting from our minerals and calling us unstable. His voice grew quieter, more intimate. They didn't fear our poverty, they feared our awareness. Because the day we wake up, we will stop digging for others and start building for ourselves. Then came the slide that stunned even the most skeptical foreign press. Burkina Faso's 48-hour extraction. Comparative revenue. $22.3 million USD. Without foreign support compared to $26 million USD annually. Average revenue under 15 years of foreign contracts. One shocked reporter from the UK asked, How did you manage this? Traoré replied calmly. Simple. We stopped believing we couldn't. Voiceover fades in. It wasn't the equipment that changed. It wasn't even the mineral fields. It was the mindset. The press conference had gone beyond Burkina Faso. It was now being live-streamed on mobile phones from Kigali to Kinshasa, from Tunis to Tamale. And Traoré knew it. He stepped forward once more, this time without slides. Just his voice and the African sky watching overhead. This is not just about us. Burkina Faso is a page in a much larger book, a book written in the dust of the Congo, the diamonds of Sierra Leone, the oil of Nigeria, the coltan of the DRC. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Every time one of our nations signs an exclusive mining contract with a foreign power, a door closes for African unity. Then he paused. But now we've opened one. A new slide appeared, this one titled African Sovereign Mining Alliance, Draft Formation. Below it, logos and flags of nations that had expressed interest in what was now being called the Traoré model. Mali, Guinea Central, African Republic, Niger, Chad, Zimbabwe, Sudan. And even rumblings, quiet but growing, in Tanzania and Algeria. The alliance proposed shared mining technology and training, joint investment banks using local currencies, Pan-African geological data mapping, protection agreements against foreign interference. One Western correspondent muttered into a mic, "A mineral OPEC, but African." Traoré smiled. "Yes, but instead of raising prices, we raise dignity." A new number appeared behind him, projected annual revenue, if African nations extract just 30% of their mineral wealth independently. $174 billion USD gasps, whispers, silence. That is nearly double the total annual aid Africa receives, and they called it help. We call it theft, now corrected. Voiceover. What began as an experiment had become a blueprint, a sovereign, self-sustaining model that required no permission, no approval, only courage. Outside the building, in the streets of Ouagadougou, something remarkable was happening. Children were drawing with chalk on walls, Afrique in your reach, Africa rich. For the first time in generations, young Africans were not told to flee for gold. They were told they were standing on it. Back in the room, many reporters still struggled to grasp how it was even technically possible. How did a landlocked nation, cut off from Western financing, without massive foreign corporations or multinational supervision, manage to mine over $20 million in minerals in 48 hours? Traoré anticipated the question. He tapped the final tab on his screen. Our tools, our people. Let me be very clear, he began. Burkina Faso did not do this alone, but we did it without the West. The screen revealed a map of Africa, key regions blinking in red. Guinea supplied mobile ore scanners, Mali provided overland transportation and military security. DR Congo lent 12 engineers specialized in lithium extraction. South Sudan offered deep soil radar tech. Zimbabwe sent a team to train on refining and grading gold. This was not a national operation, it was a continental one, a coalition of the willing, of the awakened. Traoré paused, letting that sink in. We don't need the World Bank's loans. We have each other's knowledge. We don't need the IMF's predictions. We have African certainty. We don't need European tools. We have African hands. Another slide emerged, this time showing the Burkina Faso Mining Corps, a new national unit made up of soldiers, scientists, and former informal miners. 42% were under the age of 30, 18% were former artisanal miners now on salary, 36% were women working in testing, labs, logistics, and coordination, 100% were African. We proved that talent doesn't come from Europe, it comes from investment and belief. These young men and women were once told they were useless. Today, they've unearthed a billion-dollar future. He looked around the room and added softly, "You will never again call us beggars. Not after this." Voiceover. Africa had long been told to wait. For help, for permission, for training. But in 48 hours, Burkina Faso had proven the continent didn't need saviors, just sovereignty. Outside the press hall, the air felt different, lighter, louder. Somewhere nearby, a crowd had written on a wall in bold charcoal letters, "We dig for us now." The world was watching and reeling. What had started as a domestic press conference had now evolved into a continental awakening and a global disruption. Within 24 hours of the announcement, the World Bank released a statement urging transparency in African mining initiatives. The European Union expressed concern over unregulated extraction and resource nationalism. Several Western media outlets called Traoré's declarations reckless populism. A U.S. cable, leaked via African journalists, warned of the destabilizing rise of sovereign mining blocs. Traoré didn't flinch. "We are not destabilizing anything," he said in his follow-up address. "We are ending the imbalance that your empires built on our backs." The screen now displayed headlines. France may suspend technical mining cooperation with Burkina Faso. IMF delays talks with Ouagadougou pending fiscal reassessment. Traoré smiled without joy. They will threaten aid. They will cut training, they will block licenses, but ask yourselves, why is our independence a threat to them? Why does our success frighten them more than our poverty? A journalist asked, "Aren't you afraid of sanctions?" He responded instantly, "We are already sanctioned every time we export our gold and import back poverty. We are already punished every time our people die in hospitals while our minerals power satellites." The crowd outside had grown larger than any demonstration in years. Students, miners, street vendors, all chanting one phrase, "We are not your mine." Then Traoré dropped a final bombshell. "If the West does not want to cooperate respectfully with Africa, let it be known. We are already discussing barter-based mineral exchange with other Global South partners. No more dollars, no more euro dependency. We are done renting our future." Voiceover. What Traoré was doing wasn't just mining wealth, it was mining fear from the foundations of a rigged global system. He wasn't asking for a seat at the table. He was daring to build a new one with African stone. The speech had gone viral, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the entire continent. In Bamako, thousands gathered in front of the Malian Energy Ministry with banners, "Our ground, our rules." In Kinshasa, miners held a 24-hour work stoppage, demanding national control over cobalt exports. In Windhoek, Namibian economists published a public letter. If Burkina Faso can extract, refine, and sell independently in 48 hours, what's stopping us? The answer was clear, nothing but fear. And that fear was evaporating. Traoré's office released a new document, the Pan-African Mineral Sovereignty Framework, co-drafted with Guinea, Mali, and Chad. Its pillars: all extraction contracts must be ratified by public referendum. No raw mineral may be exported without at least 25% local processing. A shared African mineral bank will stabilize prices and protect against sabotage. A defense clause: any country under economic attack for asserting mineral control will receive joint support. The framework sent shockwaves through the geopolitical community. Western embassies called emergency meetings. Foreign investors threatened to withdraw. Commodity markets fluctuated. But in Africa, something more powerful was rising than any stock index: conviction. In a surprise address broadcast jointly across national media in Niger, Guinea, and Burkina Faso, Traoré appeared with other heads of state. "They said we were too divided. They said we would fail alone. So we came together." Then, in unison. From now on, Africa speaks as one below the soil as well as above it. The cameras cut to miners across the continent, cheering, singing, even crying. One young woman from the Burkina Faso Mining Corps posted a video on TikTok. It showed her holding a chunk of ore in one hand and a textbook in the other. Her caption, "My land funds my future, not theirs." Voiceover. The continent had shifted. The myth of helplessness was cracking. And for the first time in generations, Africa didn't just look rich, it felt rich. But the world hadn't seen the final number yet. That moment was still to come. The camera returned to Ouagadougou. Outside, tens of thousands had gathered under the night sky. In cities across the continent, Bamako, Conakry, Niamey, Kinshasa, crowds waited in front of screens, radios, or phones. They weren't waiting for a match. They were waiting for a moment in history. Traoré stood alone under the spotlight, beside a digital counter, still blank. He looked calm, focused, but in his eyes burned something deeper: legacy. He raised the microphone. "My brothers, my sisters, my people across Africa, tonight I give you what they never gave us: the truth." The screen flickered. The counter began to climb. It ticked past. 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, then it stopped. Total value of minerals extracted in 48 hours, under sovereign control, 28.4 million USD, not including royalties, byproducts, or long-term value. The crowd gasped, then silence, then a roar, not of joy alone, but of vindication. Traoré raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. Let me tell you what this number means. This is what we are capable of when we believe in ourselves. This is what happens when we trust our own minds, our own hands, our own soil. He continued. In 48 hours, we did what they said we could never do. We turned the earth beneath our feet into a future we can own. His voice deepened. This number is not the end. It is the beginning. And if we can do this in 2 days, imagine what we can build in 2 years, in 2 decades, in 2 generations. He looked up, not at the cameras, but at the sky. We don't owe the world our gratitude for our minerals. The world owes us respect. The screen behind him now flashed a new phrase. This is what freedom looks like. Voiceover closes. Burkina Faso had unearthed more than minerals. They unearthed a truth too long buried, that poverty was a policy, dependency was a design. But freedom was always buried within the land, and the people brave enough to claim it. As the music swelled and the crowd chanted his name, Traoré stepped back from the podium, not as a ruler, but as a man who had shown Africa the mirror, and for once, it reflected power.